Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audrey Hinds, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome to Season 3 of Women in the Arena podcast. I'm your host, Audrey Hinds, and thank you so much for being part of this community that celebrates women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We are celebrating yet another magnificent woman today, so let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for joining me again today. I am joined this morning by Audrey Hinds, and she is such an amazing and lovely, remarkable woman. And she has always known since she was a very young child that she wanted to be a writer. She just didn't quite know what that journey was going to look like. And her journey has taken unexpected turns at times and has been an interesting adventure. She's here with us today to not only talk to us about her journey into being an author, but how she took that passion, created an entire business so she could ignite other women's passions that are bound and destined to be writers. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Audrey Hinds. Audrey, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Audra, it is a pleasure for me as well to be here with you. I am so excited. Thank you for having me.
It is, like I said, it is my pleasure, and I'm very excited for you to be here because you talk about your passion and how you have changed your life by chasing your passion and how you are changing other women's lives and helping to ignite their passions. But before we get to that, we want to get to know you just a little bit better. So will you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. Audra, I am a Southern belle from the small county of Dinwiddie in Virginia. I was born and raised there, and I still live in Virginia to this day. Now, as you mentioned earlier, I knew from the age of 12 that I wanted to be a writer. I had no idea how I would get there, but I knew it's what I wanted to do. It was the thing that brought me comfort, and it was the thing that made me feel the happiest. So I wrote poetry. Poetry was my first love. And I spent a lot of time doing that as a teen, as many of us teens do. And moving forward, as I got a little older, I started to write for a local newspaper as a junior analyst. And from there, I found myself out of school and working a 9-to-5, eventually being a wife and mom. And those dreams had kind of fallen by the wayside. Back in 2019, I decided to go back to my roots. I knew that it was, although I had many things in my life that were very fulfilling, I understood that without that element of writing, I wasn't going to be at my happiest and most fulfilled. And I wasn't serving my purpose in my role at a 9-to-5 career. So I went back to writing, and I didn't just write any book. I decided to write a children's book. And fast forward, I'm now a children's book author and a publisher.
See, that's why I say that you decided to chase your passion, and you did it on purpose. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today, is that you had this passion. We've all had these passions that we're like, oh, I have this dream to do this. And unfortunately, responsibility always creeps its ugly head in and says, okay, this is what I have to do because I need to take care of my family. I need to take care of having a roof over our head. And, I need to be a responsible adult. I have little humans I have to raise. That always seems to get in the way. but you heard that silent gnawing call that is, I know that we all can relate to that there is this quiet little ache in our souls that say there's something that you need to do. There's something more you're supposed to do. And you finally got to a point where you're like, I can't ignore this. So when you decided to answer the call of that, what compelled you to take that first step? Because I know that first step is terrifying. It is like, oh my gosh, can I really do this? So what was it that you're like, I'm just going to take the first step?
Yeah, that's a great question, Audra. So, writing for me is that why that makes me cry. It's a cliche, but for me, it was true. I would be in my car and I would just the thought of being an author, I would start crying, I would start praying. And I would start visualizing and wanting to manifest this into my life. I had a vision board where I imagined that I would have this conversation with Oprah on her couch, that I would write plays for Tyler Perry. So the dream was big, right? If I'm going to dream, I may as well dream big. But what ultimately pushed me out of my comfort zone, I would have to say those very responsibilities that you were talking about, my family. I knew that in order for me to encourage them to one day live on purpose, that I first had to model that for them. And that was the thing that really was the driving factor to me taking fear off of the table and just going for it.
What you just said is, as we encourage our children to live on purpose, it's something that we talk about as, go for it. You create your goals, visualize achieving your goals and push towards that. But you're right. If we become so overwhelmed by our own responsibility, how are they ever going to learn to be able to do that if they've never seen it? So I think that was a really brave decision and honestly a responsible one. That was, if I'm going to get my children, maybe even your husband, maybe your extended family, maybe your neighbors, your friends, but those that are beyond your small nuclear family, maybe in order to inspire them, you said, I have to do this first. So you started with a children's book. Why a children's book? Those aren't easy to write. Everybody says, oh, these cute little children's books. I mean, not all children's books are created equal. Some of them are awful because we've all read books to our children and we're like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever read. So, and you don't want to dumb it down for the little humans. You want to teach and entertain the humans. So you started with a genre that is not easy. So why did you start with a hard one?
So that's a great question. So I was under the same misinformation that everyone else usually is. I assumed it would be easy. And you're right. It was not. It was not easy by any means. I recognized that I had to identify my ideal reader. I recognized that I had to make sure that it was written in a language that was understandable, yet still had a relatable message. I recognized that this book had to, very much like you said, it had to not only educate, but also entertain in a way that made sense. And although I wanted to put a big message of self-love and self-esteem boosting, I realized I had to condense it into a small package. And you would think that would be easy, but no, it was not by any means. So for me, my daughter, I remember Elsa or the movie Frozen. It was very popular at that time. So Elsa, that princess, she was very popular. All the little girls wanted to be like her. And in the store, it wasn't Halloween, but we were in a store and my daughter saw this Elsa wig. and she wanted that Elsa wig, and I would not buy it for her. Now, I wouldn't buy it for her because I didn't believe in dress up. I thought dressing up was fantastic. It's fun. I still enjoy dressing up as an adult, but I knew the thought behind it for her at that moment was she wasn't confident about her own hair. And she was having struggles with her own self esteem, specifically dealing with the hair. So, the hair is the tool that I used in the book to talk about self esteem. And the first book was entitled Hair with Flair. And it was about my daughter's big, thick, curly, long hair. And to normalize it, to make her feel great, to tell an honest story. So I'm a huge advocate of starting conversations early in homes, schools, libraries, counselors' office, organizations, but also telling a very honest story. So that's what I did. And when I recognized that I could pair something that I was passionate about with what something my daughter was passionate about, then for me, it was a go. So within the book, there are illustrations that are on the wall of her bedroom because the main setting is her bedroom. And all of those illustrations belong to my daughter. So truly, it was a collaborative work that her and I did together. But it sent a very loud message to her that, girl, you are just as God made you and you are fabulous. Girl, you have hair with flair.
Yeah, you don't need, and I know I can picture the wig that you're referring to. It was this
Mm-hmm.
long braided blonde. But you're right. It reinforces the idea that to be beautiful, all of us have to have long blonde flowing hair.
Yeah.
And you decided to take that as a challenge to demonstrate to your daughter and all kinds of children all around the world to say, you know what you've been given is just as beautiful. And this is what you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did you chase your passion, you went into a genre that is really hard, really, really hard. Because like I said, you don't want to dumb it down for the little humans. You just don't. But you went into this with your eyes wide open, but you also filled a need that is wide open in children's literature, which is diversity.
Mm-hmm.
That is lacking in children's books for having representation of all kinds. And you went in there and said, you know what, I'm going to write something for my daughter. But you wrote it for all little girls and little boys, for that matter, that don't have long, blonde, flowing hair. Was that the genesis of you starting your own publishing company? Because your book is self-published,
Yeah.
but I know that you didn't start out thinking, I'm going to start a publishing company. But what was that, I should say, that said, I've got something here. I've fulfilled a need. Maybe there's more needs. So how did that come about?
So the first book, Hair with Flair, although it's considered self-publishing, I still went to a boutique publisher. So this person, I paid them a fee and they helped me go through the steps of actually launching that book. So the entire time while this person was doing the legwork, I was doing the promotion. I was the face of the book. So my audience started to build. And you're right, people started to notice. So by the time it came for book number 2, Hair with Flair was already a bestseller. And I decided to give the second book, My Daddy the Coach, a try to do it on my own. And that one was 100% self-published. So by the time individuals online and even within my circle of friends started to notice that I was coming out with the second one, they were starting to get curious and they were starting to tell their own truth, which is, I've always wanted to write a children's book, or hey, I'm a writer too. Hey, I'm a creative too. Or hey, I have a story to tell. And at that time, I was riding the bicycle as I was building it. So I shared with them, I said, listen, I can help you I can help you, but you must be very, very patient because I am learning this process. They were patient. They were patient. I work with moms, so they understand being the grace and just showing mercy when needed. They also wanted to put diverse books on the market. They also recognize that there was a lack in the market, and statistically that shows. It's not just something that we think is happening. Statistically, it shows that diverse books are lacking in the market. So right now we're in a place where we're trying to play catch up. So the thought of me being able to help someone that can feature a character that looked like my son, that looked like my daughter, it was huge for me. So I took my time and I learned, and I continue to learn. This is my craft. It's something that I love and that I'm passionate about, and I will forever be a student and always wanting to get better in this arena.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more from Audrey Hinds.
This episode is sponsored by Belleville Capital Management. When you need a friend in the small business arena, reach out to Belleville for your planning, lending, and investment needs. A friendly consultant will help you find the solutions that you are looking for. Belleville Capital Management, a friend to small business. You were brave enough to follow your passion, which then led to a much bigger vision than even you had for yourself originally. And now you're helping to impact changing the way the children's literature market looks. Tell us a little bit more of some of the other books that you're publishing for other authors and how they are filling a gap that is woefully needed right now.
Most definitely. So gosh, right now we are up to 18 books, and there are currently 8 in queue. So we have quite a selection of books. I would say some that come to mind are there's a book called Best Friend Goals by Ariel Roscoe, and that one is about her son who has autism, but his best friend does not. That one is a fantastic book for teaching compassion and for just teaching open-mindedness. I'm such a fan of that book, and she's gotten so much visibility and recognition just for honestly sharing her son's story. Another one that comes to mind is Dancing with Butterflies, and that one is all about teaching children how to manage anxiety. So that one's by Adrienne Barr. She's another best-selling author. That book is also a teacher's pick and continues to be high on the list of buys on Amazon. And I'll leave you with 2 more, although, again, I could go on and on. Crystal McLean, that one is another bestseller that has been incredibly popular. Hers is Harmony in the Empty Piggy Bank, and it's all about investing and saving and budgeting for our little ones, but in a very entertaining and educational way. It is just phenomenal. And finally, one that's in queue right now that's due to release in just a few months is called Differently Daphne. Oh gosh. So I love this one because it is the author, her name is Adrienne Free, and she is talking about really her experience as a child. So Adrienne has Erb's palsy. So it's paralysis of one of her arms. So she's not able to do those things that, we do on a daily basis that we really don't think of, like driving a car, brushing our hair, those styling our hair, those things, or even cooking a meal, those things that come so easily to us with having full functionality of both of our hands. She recognizes there's an entire community of children out there that struggle with tying a shoe, that struggle with learning how to type, that will have different struggles in life that their parent can't even relate to. The doctor that they go see can't even relate to because they don't have that same thing. So she wrote a beautiful story of how to overcome and fearlessness and just how to ensure that their story is not just their own. They have a relatable book out there that they can reference and enjoy, and at the end find that triumph that we're all looking for. Oh gosh, yeah. I just get so excited about it. So yeah, we have some great stories out there and coming down the pike.
Well, clearly are demonstrating how you can impact our young ones, our next generation, on how they're feeling about anxiety and money and differences, and acknowledging and accepting them and making them normalized. It's normal to be different.
Yep.
And we've had two of those authors already on the show, and their books are lovely. They're unique and they're warm-hearted, but they also pack a big impact with a strong message without overwhelming their target audience. They're quite talented, those authors, because they really do a phenomenal job. But what I want to know is evident on the audience that you're impacting, but what about these actual authors? What about these women that you have helped give birth to their dream? How are you impacting them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, we continue to stay in contact. It that is one of the best things that I enjoy about my role as a publisher, because it really is a lifelong relationship. These are my village sisters. These are authors that I respect, that I love, and that I want to see continue to thrive and grow. With my publishing, I also did a 12-week training. So for these ladies, I bought in 11 separate on, it was a total of 12 weeks. I did 1 week, and then I had 11 leaders in all different sectors of the writing world to come in and train these ladies, to position them to be in the best spot for their book, to teach them how to do a media interview, to teach them how to dress as an author, to teach them how to actually run a business, to teach them how to manage their money as an author, to teach them how to do their marketing as an author, to make sure that they understood that because they have a book, they now have a business. And a lot of people don't recognize that fact. I was one of them. So it was extremely important for me to make sure that these women were prepared for the opportunities that I knew would come.
So you got them ready. You got them ready and you got them set up for success at the get-go, before the book was even published, before anybody knew their name. You already were teaching them how they were going to be successful, because you had already invested in them and said, you are going to be impactful. You are going to have a level of success. Let me teach you how to manage it. I think that is remarkable, because how many of us are taught how to be successful before we even get there? Once again, you modeled for them what success looks like. So if they could see it, they could do it. That is game changing. I would actually challenge that and say that's not just game changing, that's world changing.
Wow.
What would you say to that? How would you feel about the thought of you're changing the world?
Audra, in my mind, I still have that barrier of still thinking I'm just this small town girl that's just doing what I love, if I'm being totally transparent. But I can honestly say I see the reach that not only my books are making, but the reach that the books that I have helped to birth are making. And several of them are international. So I know what you're saying is facts, is just me fully just embracing and accepting that truth. I'm just at a very humble and grateful place, and just still can't even believe that I get to wake up and do what I love every day and work with women that are game changing and world changing and making a huge impact themselves. In any way that I can get them to that finish line, I'm going to continue to do it.
So what does it look like? Because you have transformed your life to demonstrate certain characteristics for, first it was for your children, it was for your family, and now it's for your authors. How do you model what a world changer looks like? How do we learn from you to do the same?
That's a great question. I would say the biggest thing, Audra, is always be a student of your craft. That's the best advice that I can give because I know it's something that I do model. I'm constantly doing trainings for children's books and marketing and writing in general, just to make sure that I stay at the top of my game, just to make sure that I'm always in a position that I can answer the question or at least find the answer to any questions that may come my way. So I would say that's how you start, Audra, is always be a student of your craft and show up. Show up. You have to be consistent. You have to be present and show up.
And, I have learned that lesson probably the hard way, which is make sure that you show up. But for me, what I have done in that practice is at first I thought, and it was falsely thought, that showing up meant that I had to be perfect when I showed up. I have now learned that that's not what showing up means. Showing up for me means showing up authentically, showing up on good days and bad days and every day in between. And I know that you feel the same, is that you need to be there and you need to show your whole self. You humbly, both dramatically, all your strengths, all your weaknesses, show up. How do you show up in your everyday life? How do you present yourself to your mompreneurs that are also falsely thinking, I have to have this all together. I have to be completely done, correct all the time. What do you say to them? Because I know that you're not perfect all the time. You're just not. And that's endearing and relatable. How do you set them up for success? Tell them success is coming. This is what you need to do. And then balance it with, but be human.
I set the example. I set the tone. Even on my social media platforms, I am incredibly transparent. I don't have secrets, right? So I don't mind sharing the failures that I've experienced. I am not afraid to admit that less than 4 years ago, I was living in a basement in my mom's place with 2 children as a single mom. I am not embarrassed to admit that I don't have a degree. And I work with women that I work with, I think, 4 currently that have a doctorate degree, and all the rest of them at least have a bachelor's or master's degree. So the big thing for me is show up as yourself. You do not have to change yourself for anyone else. With me being from Dinwiddie, I often use terms like y'all and ain't. And do I know these aren't words? Of course I know that. But I also know it's part of who I am. And I'm sorry, there's just something about throwing a good y'all or ain't in a sentence that just makes it more relatable and more fun. So that's how I show up. That's how I set the example. I can have these higher level conversations if I need to, because I do put in the time to get the education that I need for what I'm doing. But I just show up and let them and allow them to feel vulnerable. And that's the other thing. So often, especially as women, we're so afraid to be vulnerable, especially to one another. And I don't believe in that at all. I believe in being vulnerable. And as you mentioned earlier, just showing up authentically. And I find that that's how I get most of the folks who gravitate to me. And I know that if I am always showing up transparent, then I'm going to get the exact person that I want to work with. If I'm showing up as a representative of myself, then someone that I generally would not want to work with is going to come in my circle. And then I have to be someone I'm not for 6 months while we're doing this book. I don't want to do that. I want to be Audrey. I'm okay with myself, right?
Audrey, what is next for you? I know that you only mentioned 2 of your books. You actually have 5 that you've already published and more on the way. So tell us a little bit about the books that you've already published and what's coming.
What's next for me? My goodness. So, of course, I recognize that as a solopreneur, there's only but so many people that I can individually help. So the big goal for me is to put out a course where I can reach the masses, because the reality is the need for more children's book literature is so important. So to be able to help people by way of a course, I'm very excited about that, and that'll come later in the fall.
So you're actually going to be teaching other authors or aspiring authors to both write books and publish them?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That would be exciting. Is it just for children's books, or is it any kind of book?
It's any kind of book. Now, I'm the first to say that I do specialize in children's books, but the reality is those same principles apply to any type of book because the foundational things are the same.
So regardless of genre, principles are the same. So you're literally putting tools in people's hands that if this is the dream that keeps you up at night, I'm going to help you get there.
That's exactly right. I am sharing my intellectual property, Audra. I'm sharing it. I'm giving away the goods.
Wow, that is rare. That is rare. You're not keeping it a secret.
Mm-mm.
You're giving it away so you can empower others to follow in your footsteps.
That's exactly right. I realize that I can't write all the books and I can't publish all the books. So why not position individuals to be able to not only write, but self-publish their book and create an extra stream of revenue and create an opportunity for themselves to start creating their own legacy.
So before I let you run, I want to give you space to leave our community with a final thought. What would you say to them?
I would say do it afraid. Whatever it is for you, do it afraid, because you will find on the other side of your fear triumph and success. Denzel Washington said it best. He said, if you fall down 7 times, get up 8. So regardless of what your fear is, just try, because you never know what blessing is waiting for you on the other side. I am an example of that.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for the reminder, and thank you for the encouragement to do it afraid.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being here. Thank you for sharing your story and the stories of the women that you are empowering and representing. And thank you once again for standing up and doing it afraid. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Audra.
Thank you all for joining me again today, and we will see you again next time. That's our show. I want to send a special thank you out to our guests for being so generous with their experiences and their stories, as well as our sponsors so they can allow us to continue to tell these stories. I also want to say a special, special thank you to all of you, this community that we have been building one person at a time so we can endeavor to change the world one interview at a time. I could not do any of this without your support, and for that, I am forever grateful. I look forward to doing this again, so we'll see you all next week.
just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.